Hello and welcome. This is our little free race show, and you can see right there Ferrari down the inside, and that was the beginning of a bad day for Ferrari last week. Sven got very, very caught out, and it would then be the Williams that was on pole, Mizzo, who shrieked away as the cars headed towards turn 4 for the first time of asking. Everyone just about got through there okay. There was a little bit of a dive bomb in the background that would result in a penalty point. Next up, here you go. NR Andy descending into turn number 1, lap 3 already. And there was a lock-up from both the cars in front. We saw this throughout. Braking at Bahrain was really, really tricky to get right. They come up to turn number 4. You can see the Racing Point and the Haas dueling double lock-up from each of them for India or Racing Point now. That one goes deep. Enerandy up the inside, but keep an eye on the distance. There you go. Alfa Romeo in the middle of the track, and a huge collision that would lead to Philippic retiring from the session, and everybody else's race, well, certainly going downhill from that point, you'd have to say. We got another little look at it here. So you can see already the cars in front are struggling with their brakes just a little bit. We get through this first little kink, ascend up towards that DRS zone. Well, everybody just kind of closing up with the slipstream, getting closer and closer, but keep an eye. You can look at the battle if you want, but it's really up there. A couple of cars in the distance you want to see, because that Alfa Romeo is going to touch the curb. Around he goes. One of the cars gets through, but then the Haas just does not. Huge impact. Cars in the air. McLaren somewhere out in the desert by the time all that one had finished. That would have a lasting impact, to say the least, in TNS F1. Wasn't too happy with how that played out, being left there stranded in the AlphaTauri car as that Alpha just drives off towards one of the holes in the Armco barrier. We then move on towards lap number 4, and Houeni, he was already beginning to struggle with his tyres. A move easily done on the brakes by Hugos, despite having been on the outside. Houeni would try to fight back just a little bit, but it wasn't to be for the Merc driver. And then you see almost a carbon copy, again, just struggling with traction out the final corner. This time Kanakinchi wants to get the drive, and down the inside, just ease the Merc up onto that curb where it can't get the traction. And that's a job done for Kanakinchi, who could then follow up onto that lead battle. We see, once again, Houeni, this time being chased down by Aleph, a lock-up at the final corner, and the Mercedes would just start dropping down the order. And that was the beginning of what wasn't a very good race for Mercedes, to say the least at all. Houeni would also have the DRS. They're still within a second of the cars in front, but when you get to the braking, you can just see how much earlier that second of the Mercedes cars had to brake in order to get it stopped for the corner. Again, an attempt to fight back through that slower part, but it just was not to be. And, well, as you'll see later, it only went worse from that point onwards for the Mercedes boys. Then it was the Ferrari next up, and again, we're coming up into the final couple of corners. Ferrari closing. Another lock-up from Houeni, and that would mean pretty much the end of it for him. You can see he pulls off towards the pits. Vexit, very intelligent, gets the slipstream for as long as possibly can before making sure that they don't end up in either the pit lane or that pit wall. Safety car would come out on lap number 7, and not only would this close up the field to some degree, but you'd also end up with a sudden change in strategy. It was the beginning of that pit stop window being open, but suddenly everybody was flying into the pits, and who's this going to help? Well, it's going to help out those guys that were involved in the earlier collisions, maybe just a touch, because if they had to come in, change a few of those things, they could get right to the front of the pack. In the end, the only person who would be able to do so was Ruthful. As you see, Iconi just about got away without being held up by that Ferrari. Or crucially, the Ferrari just about got away without being held up by Iconi, you would say. There's the Alpha at the front of the field. Ruthful, very, very nice indeed. Back racing once again, and it was a battle to see who could get past that Alpha as quickly as possible. Ultimately, collisions into the first corner, as we always see. Sven just about getting away with it, but Vexit, well, Vexit means Vexit. In this case, Vexit means big accident. We then cut forward, lap 12 of 29, and it was the Renault who was beginning to struggle on the tyres, and through comes the AlphaTauri this time, just pushing that Renault a little bit wide, but ultimately had to slot in back behind once again. Moving forwards once more, we're now on board with the higher up of the two alphas. Ikoni getting a little bit held up potentially in this battle pack, and just couldn't quite get a way through. You can see they're all in the medium tires, they're all closing up towards one another. However, getting through is a whole other matter, as we see time and time again in real Formula One. And although Mezzo maybe didn't have the pace up at the front, didn't necessarily have a lack of pace either. It wasn't that they were slow, it's just that they maybe weren't as quick as they could have been. Kanakichi with a little bit of a lock up down the hill once again, and then would come into this tricky downhill braking zone. We saw this cause several problems, and it was caused a problem for Kanakichi there. Lock it up, but Ikoni, they did the same thing, and once again, another opportunity missed. Continuing on, just a few more laps. You can see Kanakichi using a lot of ERS because they've got to defend from that AlphaTauri through turn number 4. Gets a little bit of an overlap, but can't get by. Mizzo gets a little bit of breathing room once again. Alpha coming down the hill, tries to send one into that tricky zone, but late braking from the Renault just about gets away with it. And the packs would then close up throughout the rest of the race. Kanakichi now getting an overlap on Mizzo, but again, Mizzo just eases the Renault out wide, gets a good exit, and also manages to have the DRS down the straight because the detection zone is actually during the braking for turn 1 at Bahrain. So that was a clever bit of defense there, getting on the outside, conserving that momentum, and then driving that Williams off of the corner. Again, Renault doesn't drop back particularly far, though, does it? And in fact, just a couple laps later, with the exact same scenario again, this time Renault getting up before the braking zone, going to the inside. Mizzo pulled across to try and defend, but not wholeheartedly, kind of sat in the middle of the road, a little bit of wheel barging, a little bit of front wing to front wing action, and this time Renault refuses to be squeezed, actually gets the nose in front on the run up to turn 4, but Mizzo pulls out an incredible performance in the braking zone, gets it stopped, pulls in for the apex as well, and Can would have to try another day. Notice that Ikoni not on that pack anymore. Ikoni instead committing to the 2-stop strategy, comes out fresh set of mediums, and with only 4 laps to go at this stage, begins to cut through this pack of slower cars on old hard rubber. First on the list, Jonah, Racing Point numero dos, and gets round the outside just using fantastic grip that whole time, just simply getting the traction down more easily than their rival. Next up, the more forward of the two Renaults. Ikoni this time slides around the outside of Felix Lundberg, and it was a simple move, but a very, very impressive one nonetheless. A little bit of a twitch in terms of getting the power down, but there's not much you can say wrong with that, when really that overtaking move was the best one of the entire race. Ikoni then immediately up onto the back of Hoeni, who we saw struggling with tires earlier on. It was happening at the same point late on in the stint. Just doesn't have the braking power, the ability to get the car stopped. Runs deep at the bottom of the hill. Ikoni gets to the inside and makes another unorthodox move. It's not often you see overtaking there, just to how late that apex is, but when you can do it, you most certainly should. Ultimately, Ikoni wouldn't quite manage to get up onto the back, but Hoeni would have a huge, huge incident, just touching the curb there, pushing to try and stay within the DRS to fight back, spinning again. Those tires are roasting hot. 8th would be where it'll levels out due to some incidents for those guys further back, but you gotta say, Hoeni would be disappointed with that. An unforced error, dropping a lot of points in the championship. Aizon, he's trying the same thing as Ikoni did, a little bit further back, so taking a little bit longer to catch this group of pink cars, but got through, and partially because Jonah, Felix, and Fluffy, they were all hugely, hugely dueling throughout that entire race, but you can see the Haas pulling out the slipstream in that little clip. And that might have cost them, because you can see only one and a third laps away from the end of this race here. And that's when the McLaren got through, and they probably cost themselves 4 or 5 seconds in terms of battling. However, we come through final lap, final sector, and Can pushing incredibly hard, opposite lock through the first part of sector 3 there, but can't quite get back onto the tail of the Williams. Just opened up enough of a gap with a couple laps to go that the Williams had to use the ERS, had to use all those tires to try and close and then couldn't get a move done, and Mizzo would take an incredibly well-earned victory. Cam would be in second, and then you can see the rest of the standings here. Ikoni, two-stop worked well. Didn't lose anything since they were sitting third anyway, but got to have a bit more of an exciting race, and Aizon definitely gained from it. The two racing points, they were 5th and 6th, with Fluffy, Sven, Ruthful, and Aleph rounding out those top 10, but crucially those points, they don't count for Mercedes in the Constructors, since Aleph was in fact a reserve driver that week, meaning that Hoeni and P11, no points for Mercedes still. Put simply, a lot to do for that team. We'll be back in just a moment.
Right, cool, they're going to start this.
Hello and welcome to the virtual Vietnamese Grand Prix here in the virtual city of Hanoi. Tier number 1 in Delta Motor Racing tonight, and that means that the best of the best, the fastest guys in this league setup will be going head to head around 5.6 kilometers of track, some of it purpose-built, some of it public roads, but all of it exciting. There's inspirations taken from Nürburgring, Suzuka, Monaco is even in here, and a little bit of Sepang as well, although there's a bit of a touch on where that one exists. Keep an eye on 6, 7, 8, and 9. A long corner where you might get a few dodgy moves, and with 3 DRS zones, one of them going down into there, you can bet you'll see some dive bombs as well throughout the course of this evening. In terms of our standings, well, it's all getting a little bit too good to be true for Mizzo. 2 wins from 2 means they are up on 50 points with their nearest rival on a mere 18, but keep an eye on that. 18 and 18 for second and third, so that duel is very tight. Those Mercedes boys as well, they've shown they've got pace, but they just haven't quite been able to utilize it for a consistent set of finishes in those opening couple of rounds. In the Constructors, well, it's Williams who still lead the way, but McLaren, Racing Point, Renault, they're separated by just 4 points, and then a further 3 back is AlphaTauri, so everything is still to play for in terms of second through to the back of the pack. Well, that's said and done. My name is Tom Davis, and joining me as ever is the fabulous Biggles. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good, thank you very much. Okay, we believe that they're starting to qualify now, so let's go down to the track and have a look at what's going on here. Here we go.
Yeah, there's a few times coming in, 133.4s being the top of it, and that's kind of what we're expecting, to be honest. We're looking at potentially a little bit lower than that. 133.0s is probably as quick as the guys will go this evening. We got to remember, this is a brand new circuit, so in terms of making sure that you know it well, you don't have that professional driver watching a real race to go off of, and do you think that'll make a difference?
Yeah, I believe so. I think it will, for sure. Sorry, I'm just going to get some information here sorted out.
Yeah, so we shall sit on board with, I believe, Jonah, or TNS F1, currently sitting 8th place. They're in an outlap. They've got the medium tyres on in that AlphaTauri, coming around to start the first of a few laps we'll see. And we're expecting mediums to be around about a second slower over the course of a lap here. Turn 1, that brings you through this tricky sector. This is the bit that's reminiscent of the Nürburgring, and in actual fact, that lap already having been abandoned. So you'll get a little bit of a guided tour of this one before we go on the flying lap. Here, these long straights, these are public roads. So you come down here. This is actually what used to be entrance to the stadium that you'll see at various points on this lap, I believe. And you come through a tricky little curb section. That's a little bit reminiscent of Monaco, but when you see the Monaco bit, trust me, you will recognize it. Again, another huge straight. You'll have DRS here come the race, and that should produce plenty of overtaking opportunities. And this one is huge. It is absolutely massive in terms of straight length. We're looking at it being around about 1.5 kilometers long. So the DRS isn't actually available until a long way down it. You then come left through a tricky corner, but it opens up on exit just to help you out. And we should see a few overtakes during the race here, to say the least. Right-hander next up, and again, just cruising through at the moment. This will be quicker, but here is your Monaco section. That right-hander, it's Saint-Devote, and then you come all the way up through as if you're going up the hill towards Mirabeau. Except rather than going to Mirabeau, you now go to Japan. You're in Suzuka now, and I'm sure you recognize it. This is the bit that was supposed to be Sepang. However, the track was actually changed for safety reasons, so this was supposed to be a tightening left-hander to end the lap. However, ultimately had to change that one a little bit, extending the penultimate corner further away, and now we get to see this quick lap from TNS F1, braking all the way down to just second gear at the apex, hook your wheel around the curb to try and pivot the car, then accelerate wider and wider before a little bit of a lift to bring you back in, and you can accelerate for the second one, a big kick of oversteer in the wall for the AlphaTauri. That's not an invalidated lap, but probably game over for that one. Definitive front wing damage, almost the entire side of the front left missing, and that is a huge impact. Hugo's currently topping the timing screens, soft tires as we would expect, and actually TNS is the only person to even try this medium setup. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, because strategies around here, they're very varied to say the least. Medium soft is probably where you want to be, assuming you can qualify on the mediums, whilst medium hard is also an option. If you start on the soft tire, then soft medium soft hard is viable, but you could potentially try a really aggressive strategy looking to start on that softest compound, put on the mediums, and then end it with a big push on that softer tire.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. Looks like NR Andy's setting. Oh no, he's not actually.
NR Andy just set the quickest time. Very impressive from the McLaren driver. Now 1:32.9, which is actually around about half a tenth quicker than we were expecting. So credit where credit's due. Who do you think is going to like this stylus circuit in terms of it being walls all around you?
I'm not quite sure with these drivers yet, actually. We haven't seen a track where they're close, Monaco-esque, shall we say, Canada and Australia. So, yeah, I don't think anybody's going at this point. So we shall see.
We shall see indeed. I believe you should check your microphone volume as well, Biggles. I think you might be a little bit quiet for the guys on stream. Got some intel from that, to say the least. In terms of who's currently looking to go on quick laps, well, it's a little bit all around. I believe Wazik, currently P7 on the timing screens in that Alfa Romeo. They're just starting a quick one. This turn one is very tricky, because at Nürburgring it does tighten, but you can see the whole corner. You can see where you want to be. You come over a crest a little bit, but you've got something to aim for. When there's a wall stopping your view, it just becomes so much more tricky. Then breaks down a huge amount of curb, like you actually see at the chicanes in Monaco, and then you want to accelerate round a wide line, but preferably not quite that wide, and that might compromise Wazik just a little bit. Then down the hill once again. Not too much elevation in terms of this track, but there is a little bit that you can certainly try and utilize. And this is not quite a straight either. You'll see you're on one road, and now you're actually on another road as you break down for this hairpin. We'll see plenty of overtakes here, and that actually reminds me a little bit of in Singapore. Now, at Singapore, you, of course, come from a turn, but it feels pretty similar in the way it'll play out come the race. Here's Saint-Devote, and you can see how similar it is in terms of driving. Now, you don't actually go up a hill, but it's the exact same driving requirements, and you should be able to go side by side there on the first lap. You then come through this Suzuka-style section, which again is just so much harder because you can't see where you're going. Here's what was originally supposed to be the final couple of corners at Sepang. Like we mentioned, that straight is far longer than it should be, so now it opens up instead of tightening in. But it's still a very nice corner, and What do you think in terms of weather, Biggles? Vietnam, it can get quite wet, but it's quite sunny here at the moment.
It is. It's got sunshine at the moment. Current weather forecast. I've illegally tapped into the FIA race control, so please don't repeat that. I guessed the password there too being James Hunt, so but let's not repeat that. But yeah.
All right, James Hunt won. James Hunt won.
James Hunt won, exactly. So I've tapped in the race control, and the weather forecasts are showing clear, obviously, for the qualifying session. Obviously, I think it's clear, too, for the race. So, and we have a little bit more information than Jeff has.
We get a little bit more info than Jeff. We're on the inside. We guessed the password, like you mentioned, hack the FIA, and we are in Rainbow popping up in the Renault, which is a very, very interesting setup. I believe Rainbow's one of our reserve drivers entering this time around. So again, another driver kind of impressing and showing that they're right up there on the pace.
Yep, that's looking good for him in second place in the Renault. So I just have mixed a couple of names around here. So I think I've got it all fixed now.
We're going to see if we can go on board with current provisional pole man, NR Andy. Right, he's currently on an outlap, wants to improve. He's got the softer tyres on that car. And to be honest, there's no reason not to, because you're not going to beat a 132.9 on the mediums, so you might as well just push. He's already committed to this strategy, so now he's got to make sure that he's on that front row, and preferably on pole. Rounds the final corner and descends into turn number 1. Get all the way over on the curb. The curbs here, they're very low. They won't punish you the same way that they do at some of those more old school tracks. And then accelerate out. Use all the roads you possibly can to open up the entry to the second corner. And then you're descending along this straight. You can actually see on the game a little bit all the little bits and pieces falling off of the trees. And you can bet if this was real life, that would have some meaningful implications in terms of running parts to stop the drains getting all blocked up in those cars. Runs wide, and I believe that's an invalidation there. We'll see quite a lot of that today. Cutting across that curb is necessary if you want to set realistic times, but you have to run it so close to the track limits that there's quite a high chance that we see a high degree of penalties coming in. Do you think that'll advantage Mizzo? We've seen time and time again that they're capable of sticking within the track limits and going quickly come the race.
We've definitely seen what happens there with the penalties, for sure. Like that's, and we'll try to keep you updated with that. At the moment, it looks like Legend actually, like in P11, he's set he's lighting up the timing boards, fastest second sector. That's the Ferrari there. We're gonna go on board with him. Might be because obviously Andy had invalidated his lap.
Yeah, and you'll notice that a couple of the guys not setting lap times, notably, I'm not sure why Aazon hasn't, but Klapek and Sven, they both picked up a lot of penalty points between them. Klapek, they were from round 1 and then obviously didn't race last week, which is why Aleph managed to pick up a couple of points, though they didn't apply to Mercedes. In terms of Sven, well, they've immediately retired from the session. That was for that turn 1 dive bomb that we saw back in Bahrain. And I would say rightfully so. So they'll have to try and come through from the back. In terms of Eisen, I'm not entirely sure why you wouldn't want to go out and set a lap. Potentially struggling with some technical difficulties on that side of things. NR Andy was actually up on their best time. They were sitting around about 2/10 up come the end of the first sector. So a shame that one got invalidated. Although potentially those 2/10 got found because of the invalidation, you could argue. So very, very fair that it got invalidated.
Exactly. It's interesting at the moment too. They're split between these guys. So although I'm not quite sure why NR Andy is showing the best lap time, but the best Sector 1 goes to Hugos. Sector 2 time goes to Legend D, and Sector 3 time goes to Rainbow. So, but overall, NR Andy, they didn't set the fastest first sector for any of those times, but has the best lap time, which is the 132.9.
Yeah, and it's very rare to see that, actually. I think Valtteri Bottas did it at one point, just setting pretty much the second best time in every sector and averaging out to be the best, given that the other sectors were split amongst 2 or 3 other drivers.
Exactly.
It's interesting to see how this one plays out, because so far it's been the Williams who've been hugely on top of things, but only one of them in the race here this evening. Mizzo currently languishing down in 6th, and a lot of drivers would be happy with 6th, but not your championship leader. So this is a real opportunity, isn't it, for somebody like a Mercedes driver or a McLaren or a Racing Point to really take the initiative and take the fight to those Williams boys.
Definitely. And I guess, too, this is going to be chances, obviously, a lot of safety cars. There's probably going to be some crashes and some carnage. So anybody that can try to keep their front wing, let's say, out of carnage, and all the crucial parts still remaining on the car, then they probably have a good chance at scoring some crucial points. Whether or not they can keep up the pace of some of these guys is something else, especially on these super long straights. And speaking of super long straights, looks like Absinthe is the fastest on that at the moment in the speed trap, 340 k's per hour. Sorry for all the miles per hour per people personas out there, but that's what I have the readings in. And all the way back to Jonah there at 332. So you can see the speed difference of this 8 kilometers an hour. And that's what separates first to last in the speed trap.
340 kilometers per hour is 211 miles per hour. So that's very fast. You mentioned safety cars just a minute ago as well, and I want to bring it back because last week at Bahrain we were talking about the fact that there's a lot of runoff there. If you go off track, your car will probably be a long way away from the racing line, apart from obviously that huge incident with the Alpha. So there, it was all about, well, you might get a yellow, you might get a VSC, but getting the actual safety car itself on track was going to be quite unusual. Here it's the opposite. As you can see, walls everywhere. So if you go off, you're just going to sit there, potentially on the racing line, so they will immediately deploy the safety car around here in an attempt to keep the race moving and not have anybody retire unnecessarily. Obviously, it's virtual, nobody's going to get hurt, but they might have their emotions hurt, shall we say, if they get taken out of the race.
Exactly. And it's a long track, right? 5.6 kilometers, and a lot of straights. Reminds me a lot of Baku, actually, as SRL Danny in the Red Bull sets the fastest purple sector, so I'm going to go on board with him. Sector 1, 25.1. So he's up for some blistering pace. Kenny top NR and some idiot off the top of the top steps. Let's see.
Danny came into this championship with the hope of winning it, and it's really not played out that way so far. Currently, Danny sits, well, a long way down the standings. Currently, I believe, well, what? I think it's 11th place as far as I can figure out. So a lot of work for Danny to do, but we do have the full season here. So there's plenty of time to figure it out, but you need to begin to build a rhythm now. It's the third race of the season. If you're still struggling come the sixth one, that's your championship hopes gone.
Exactly. Well, I mean, he might have the championship hopes, but he looks like he'd get the qualifying position right now. He set a good second sector. First sector was pretty quick. So if he can hook us up to the third one,
contact with a wall all the way through.
Yeah, P3.
That will have cost at least a tenth. That could have been a pole lap from Danny. Contact between the penultimate and final corners on the outside, and then overcompensated, steering in and making contact with the inside wall at the final corner, which, well, I don't know about you, but that feels like at least a tenth worth of time. And Mizzo, all the mean, has come up and is now within a tenth of NR Andy, and I think leading the championship by that many points, you would be quite happy just starting from the second row and finishing second this time.
Exactly. But definitely starting from the front row, because as you would expect, being in the midfield is going to be potentially very dangerous, shall we say, for keeping those carbon fiber parts on your car. So that looks like the qualifying is done. Nobody else is going to improve. A lot of those guys invalidated some quick laps there. Huini, Legend D, Hugos, and little Pick. Little Phil Pick.
I Philippic.
You're going to horrible these names, you know that. And P9, yeah, they all are validated. They were on some quick laps, so we have seen a lot of invalidation, which also indicates to me we're going to expect a lot of penalties. So I hope you have your calculator ready, because we're going to start needing to work out and start adding all these penalties up towards. Oh, luckily, actually, I have the telemetry that could probably pull it up. So the only thing it won't display in the telemetry will be whether or not the 5-second penalties, because the 5-second penalties they can serve during the race. However, they if they don't serve that, it then gets added to the total penalty time at the end.
Yeah, it's all about when you pit and when you receive the penalty. And actually, sometimes you'll want to have the penalty added on at the end, because simply stopping in the pits for that long can ruin a race strategy, and you'll lose more than the initial penalty just because you come out in traffic, for example.
Exactly.
Qualifying, it's all done. Danico put in a particularly good performance, getting up to third, so trying to keep that dream alive. But it's NR Andy on pole for McLaren, and Mizzo, the Sol Williams, well, they've represented the classic manufacturer very well, putting it on the front row. You got some idiot Rainbow Hoyne legend Hugos, Philippik, and Felix Lundberg rounding out your top 10. And I gotta be honest, I think that name Legend has been growing on me this week. I've been looking through kind of some of the previous races, getting to know the drivers a bit more, and I like the capital D on the Legend. I think it adds a lot of character.
It does. It is, like, because if he's a legend, then, perhaps he's probably, he being Brazilian, being Portuguese, he probably started to use the emphasis, like the tilde that they do in Spanish, and put the emphasis on the word. So, for example, I'm in Panama, they had the tilde on the A, so you say Panama, almost like a capital A.
Well, very well put. I'm interested to see how you think Hugo's name is pronounced there.
Hugo's.
Taking that logic.
Hugo's, yeah. Hugo's. No, Hugo's. Yeah, that's a difficult one. Anyway, we're going to get the formation lap underway, so this is going to be a chance for these drivers to get some heat into these tyres, get the nerves out, text their loved ones, and receive the texts, shall we say. Pull the cell phones out in the cars, receive their text messages from all their good luck wishes from all their fans. I'm sure if it was Lando Norris, if he could, he would possibly have a Twitch, screen.
Well, I think, did Charles Leclerc not stream a lap in an F3 car with his phone?
Did he?
Or was it his F2 car? I think it might have been his F2 car. He filmed a lap whilst holding his phone, which was very impressive.
Oh, wow.
Back to the virtual world. The drivers, they're away on their formation lap, and NR Andy gets to choose the pace here. It's one of the advantages of being on pole that's actually often underrated, because Mizzo has to stay within a certain length. So if NR Andy just accelerates away like they're currently doing, then Mizzo, in the case of the game, simply loses control because they've not stayed within that distance. However, everybody else will be okay because they've stayed within the distance of Mizzo. It's like under the safety car. You've got to stay within, I believe, 7 car lengths of the person in front, just to make sure that you keep everything nice and even together. So if you're at the front, you can control the pace. And if your car warms its tires up easily, you go. You do not let the other people try and manage those temperatures. If you need the time, you can do that as well. Back everybody up. Make sure that they lose the temperature potentially by slowing it all down. Predictive pit stop strategies, like we mentioned, soft, medium, soft, or soft, hard, soft. It's most likely going to be a 2-stop race here, but you can push it in terms of starting on the mediums, or indeed going soft to medium, although it does get very, very tricky near the end of the race.
Yeah, I just have to update the telemetry there, so unfortunately I have to pause the screen there, but I do have it on the standings. Something just went wrong again. That's what you get when you try to hack into the FIA control panel. You do get these little glitches. One day I'll get it sorted out. But for now, I just want to make sure I have the names. Otherwise, it'll throw a little confusion out there when we go on board the telemetry. But so far, I think I've got everybody in here. Legendy, Fluffy, SOR. Yeah, anyway, let's hope it works.
In terms of tyre choice, the guys, top 9, they're all on the softs. And then behind that, it gets a little bit interesting. You've got hards in there for TNS F1, Wazuks on the mediums, as is everybody else, apart from Legend and Sven, alongside Kan Akinci. So those guys potentially trying a little bit of an unorthodox strategy here this evening. The cars, they're lining up on the grid. Will it be the orange of McLaren that gets away well, or can Mizzo lead another race from the front and take advantage of penalties for the rest of the field? We are ready and waiting here. DMR, Tier 1, round number 3. We got the red lights on. Will the red mist descend on the run down to turn number 1? We're still waiting. As usual, the cars, they're waiting to go now. They leave, they're off the grid. It's a reasonable start from MR Andy. Mizzo has the inside line, however, they might challenge down into turn 1, but no. Andy swoops across the field, gets the whole shot for the rest of this lap. an AlphaTauri of some idiot trying to run it around the outside, but he's just about going to get away with it. Danico has to back out of that one. 3 abreast with Racing Point, Renault, and Mercedes. Felix coming out on top. Hoeni was involved in that as well. And then Renault just dropping back a little bit and all that. Rainbow reserve driver potentially not wanting to get involved with all of the shenanigans that were going on. Yep. Still changes for position into this big break. As we mentioned, it's like the Monaco chicanes. And that's exactly what's happening at the moment. Everyone then wants to be as wide as possible as they accelerate through. However, if you're on the inside, you might get a move. Nose contact there. Wazuka and Absinthe coming together on the exit. And now there's even more. Ferraris both in the wall together. Legend and Sven coming together with Klapek. Huge damage on Sven's front wing. Safety car deployed to pick up the debris from that. Even bigger damage on Legend, I believe. And as for Klapek, he might just have gotten away with that. The contact was on his wheel. But like you said, we will very likely have a safety car, and it has in fact been deployed.
There it is. Yep. A lot of carnage there in the midfield. All the front runners got away quite easily. I need to update the position changes there. I'll turn the telemetry off, the track map for everybody. I have my own track map, but I need it for everybody. Yeah, so big gainer there, obviously. Felix up 4 positions from the start there. Fluffy 3 positions, Absent 4 positions, Jonan 2, and Can. That's Can, obviously, who had missed the qualifying session, has joined. So he is the other Renault driver. And as you saw in the previous race, great results. He's up 5 positions. We've already got people boxing already, as you can imagine. They want to get rid of these soft tires.
Yeah, Kanakinchi currently P2, and in the championship that is. So I'm going to have to push through the field, but already up to 11th now that a few of the drivers are stopping. Although it is interesting that some of those drivers have immediately come in to choose to get rid of the softs. And Can wanted to start with them on in the first place, so I'm not entirely sure what the Renault's trying here, but he's certainly up to something.
Yep. Okay. Problems with the telemetry again. Welcome to my day. So,
in terms of who got the best start there, I think there's actually a reasonable argument. Whoa, contact under safety car. Absinthe in the wall. I think they ran into the back of Kanakinchi there. They may well have gotten away without any damage. I'm just trying to look at the car to see if they have. I think they might have. But just ran into the back of the Renault completely unnecessarily. Back to my little Tom's trivia. And Hanoi means city within rivers. But it was traditionally called, and I'm going to mispronounce this, so I'm sorry if you're Vietnamese. It was traditionally called Phang Long, which means ascending dragon. And I think that's a much cooler name. You're saying being called Ascending Dragon. The bay that's nearby this circuit as well is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's got 1,600 islands and islets, which I think is more than Scotland has, so that's quite impressive. We've got a few islands and islets too. Vietnam also owns a 20% share of the global market in coffee. So everyone will have tried some Vietnamese coffee at some point, I think, without even realizing it. Like we mentioned before, that final corner, it looked very different when the plans were ground broke in March 2019. But only just over a year later, by which point the track had to be finalized and constructed, then it would, of course, have been changed in preparation for when the circuit was supposed to debut in April 2020. However, coronavirus hit and the race was cancelled.
Yeah, very unfortunate. Now it looks like Rainbow's boxing. He wants to get those off. I believe, too, that Vietnam also provides, I think, 1/3, or if not more, 2/3 of the world's rice production.
Yes, yeah, I believe that's correct as well. Interesting, you don't realize how many kinds of rice there are until you try and find statistics out like that. Because all of the statistics are about different kinds of rice. You're like, oh, I was just looking for rice. I noticed that when I was going through a few facts. Also, we don't have tons of history to talk about. It's a brand new circuit, but these guys have clearly got grips on it, given that they were about a 10th quicker than we expected in quali, which doesn't happen by accident. Rainbow, they pitted, like you mentioned, and they tried to come out of the pits wobbling for position, because remember, when you're in the pits, you're being overtaken, and you can, in fact, still overtake. In fact, the Renault's still alongside the Mercedes, trying to figure out where they were when they actually went over that pit lane line that signifies you've rejoined the track. And they're not happy. Both of them are running side by side at the moment. I think technically Klapek's behind as it stands. However, that was a very interesting incident. They got to be careful in resolving that one, because they will receive a penalty if they get it wrong.
It is interesting, and even though we have the safety car, we still have 19 runners in this race, which is great to see. As we are in lap 3, they are bunched up, so no doubt I believe the safety car will be in once they cross the line to go into the final sector. Current weather reports looks like it's going to be just a dry race. It's not going to be that kind of Malaysian, Singapore downpour weather that you can get. Obviously, this time of the year in Vietnam, it's the dry season, no doubt, when the race is expected to be. So therefore, like I am in Panama, there's a race control for safety car. So in the dry season, it barely ever rains, obviously, but in the wet season, it rains, and it rains hard. But these drivers don't have to contend with that today. They have to contend with 18 cars aside from themselves on the track as they get heat in their tires and get ready. Now we've got a bunch of cars, obviously, with the different tyre compounds. They can run a lot longer. We still have the top 7 and running on the soft compounds. So should get a good start and get away. They need to build that gap, obviously, because they will have to box. And that's when some of these other guys can jump further down on the different tyres. And obviously Fluffy's the only one that's gone onto the hard tyres. So see how far he can get into this race.
Yeah, just about to mention, I think Fluffy might be trying to go to the end here, but the restart being controlled by Andy, he goes early, just coming out of the penultimate corner. He's not managed to get a huge gap, around about 4/10, and I believe that was somebody getting sent out way wide, maybe trying to cool the car a little bit after the safety car conditions. They're really filing their way through that first corner. They're just about making it through cleanly, a little lock up at the back of the field, but nothing doing there. Now NR Andy at the front is absolutely nailing it. Gap already up to 9/10. Remember, DRS, it's not quite enabled yet as far as I'm aware. Of course, purple sector from Andy the first time through that one. Braking, taking a lot of curbs, so have to be careful. There will be warnings given out if you stray a little bit too far. There's a little bit of a duel there. I think that was Hugo's attempting to get past Fluffy Balls. In fact, it was the other way around. Hugo's now trying to fight back, but the Haas has the high ground and gets the power down as they come onto the straight. In the front, however, these long straights, the slipstream does matter. Even without DRS, Nizzle's managed to bring that gap down by just a couple of tenths. And we've got to remember, we mentioned it right at the start, Nizzle doesn't actually need to win this race. NR Andy currently sitting quite a long way down the standings relative. It
looks like Hugo's actually made that pass. He's already dropped there on Fluffy Balls. So he has Fluffy Balls on the hard tyres. So not the temperature that he needs up there. There's also a pass at the back there between TRS and Seven, sorry. So they're swabbling for 18th and 19th. Well, Hugo's made that pass and he is up to P12. Sorry to interrupt you, as you're saying.
Don't worry, it's another interesting day for Ferrari, isn't it? They were looking okay in qualifying. Huge moment for Jonah. Jonah massively sideways with a massive correction. And now the Mercedes down the inside. Klapek trying to challenge for 16th position. Jonah's going to brave it out around the outside. Klapek tucks back into the slipstream. Now pulls out once again into turn number 1. Can he get it done? He'll be on the outside now for turn 2 and 3. We're into the third turn. This is on the line you want to be for the Mercedes, and he'll then get the inside through 4, already at the 5th corner on this track. He's going to be in front, but the Racing Point weaves around, trying to stay in that slipstream, and manages to get to the inside on the descent into turn number 6. But Klapek's strong on the brakes. He's not going to give up that easily. And next on Klapek's list, that's Rainbow, as the Mercedes tries to fight back up through the order. Kanakinchi, meanwhile, in 9th place now, gets past Absinthe, the classic slipstream move. But Absinthe, the straights here are so long that Absinthe's actually going to slipstream back and might have an opportunity into the braking zone, almost pushing the Renault. But in the end, decides to tuck in a little bit of contact there. I had to hold my breath as they came through turn 8, I believe. Sorry, turn 11. And it's just not quite on for the Haas driver, and you probably won't get it done. Oh. Remember, even at Monaco,
Can's gone into the wall. Can's completely smashed into the wall there, and that turn. So he just went straight. I believe he's still on here. It's very hard to go to the camera.
It's Rainbow sideways. Rainbow's had to spin round and is now some 6.5, 7 seconds off the back of the field. You're absolutely right. Huge contact there, potentially involving both of the Renaults. And it's a little bit of that Ferrari self-destructive tendencies. Now there's no Renaults in the top 10, and that's the only place where you will score points. The leader's already at turn 3 for this midfield battle. They're just coming into turn number 1 now. And he's on following the Haas of Absinthe, who's again very sideways and goes round. Absinthe gets it wrong at turn number 1. Everybody else has to go off the track to avoid them. Now those hard that you're hoping to go to the end on, they'll be very, very hot as they got to defend from Kanakinchi. DRS wide open for all of these guys down the straight. Can Akinchi find a way past Fluffy Balls? It's not quite going to happen there. But Klapek, TNS, Jonas, Sven, they're all through. And Absinthe is left back with Rainbow, but they might manage to work together, cycling style, and try and slipstream their way back onto the pack. The front, Mizzo's kept that gap very, very nice. And the Williams just sitting about half a second off the back of the McLaren. Tire wear is a concern here, so you do need to manage that and maybe not go for the move every single time you could. Instead, just going for it when you feel it's correct.
Looks like Jonan's going to make a pass on the Ferrari. Then we're going to move him up into P16 in the racing point. But the Ferrari's going to try to come back at him. Down on the inside there. We're locking up tyres all over the place, although I believe they didn't lock up on that time. And DRS has been enabled now, so you're going to see that factor on the main straights, the very long straights. Looks like Jonan's going to make that pass work. It's quite really still close battle at the moment. I mean, we're looking at this at the Jonan battle. Jonan's 14 seconds off the leader out of 19 runners, so they're all almost within a second of each other. A little bit of a gap between was UK, and there we go. Klapek's made a move, I believe there, plus Fluffy. Down
the Mercedes trying to recover a little bit. Holaney currently sitting 6th, so if Klapek can get in the points as well, it would be a very solid race for these Mercedes. Remember, Klapek was involved in that incident with the 2 Ferraris. Legend's still ahead of the Mercedes, just a little bit up the road, and you can bet Klapek will want to get back at that because he did look like a very, very innocent passenger amongst all of that.
Yeah, Hugo's has now got a great run. He's in P10. He should be lining up SOR Eisen, and it's down the main straight. He's going to have the DRS run.
Straight is so huge though. You almost need to make the move later on than you normally would and just kind of sit in the slipstream for a while. DRS now open on the Red Bull. Closes on the McLaren. McLaren pulls to the inside to defend. It's going to be a late defense, and that's going to leave the Red Bull on the outside at a hairpin, which is never where you want to be. Just gets run out of road, but rightfully so by Aizan. Aizan's not come here to play games. They want to hold on to that 9th because you're on the brink of falling out the points when you consider that Legend is also in this duel.
Sorry to cut you off there. During this battle as well, Mizo and NR are battling. Oh, it looks like Mizo's boxed. So it looked like NR and Mizo are exchanging positions up front as we watch the other battle as well going on. So many different battles on this track as they're still all bunched up. But that's obviously Mizo's decided to box. Danny's boxed, Huwaini's boxed.
I think what might have happened there is the pit lane entry here is actually just on the exit of turn 21. So similar to at Silverstone, for example, you will actually be ahead of the car that you were following when you enter the pits. Because the pit lane is that much shorter that even though you go slowly, you still gain an advantage for a while until those guys catch you up down the straight.
Yeah, pit lane here, I believe the time that I'm getting on telemetry is costing you about 39 seconds in and out. So,
and that is a long pit lane.
That could be that looks like it, because some people are doing a lot more, but that's with wing damage there. So, but I'll have to see. I believe that's the average time. Could be mistaken.
That is a long one, but some idiot. He is appearing to be very smart, taking advantage of the fact that Mizzo is no longer between himself and the leader. Tries to go around the outside. We've seen that this went badly before. Again, a little bit of wheel barging. Off the track goes some idiot. You have to tuck in behind. There's a little bit of a slipstream down to what we would normally call Saint Devot, but it's not going to be done there despite a lock-up for NR Andy. And these softs are definitely beginning to feel the heat just a little bit. Now, if you want to do mediums, you need to carry on. You can't box yet. If you want to go to the end on the medium tire, you'll need to do at least 1 more, maybe 2 more laps. Else you'll just have this exact same pain, but later on in the race with a medium tire, and it's so much worse. We got yellows in Sector 2. I think that's for a slow-moving Haas at the back. Potentially a mistake again from Absinthe. He's now behind Mizzo as well, so that's not gone well for the driver of the American team. Keep an eye on Felix Lundberg, however. We'll stay with this battle at the front for a little while, because Felix is closed up as well. These two have been battling, and Mizzo maybe made the correct choice to box when he did. A 2-stop, but with this much advantage, could pay off and prove to be a very, very intelligent decision.
Certainly there's some big pressure at the front there. They've already got a build up of a gap there at the moment, 2.8 behind to one of the Alfa Romeos. The two Alfa Romeos, they're running in P4, P5, but there's battle up ahead. Racing Point is keeping up there with some idiot. And that's Absinthe has stopped on track there. Oh, he's boxed. Sorry. Look at the pit lane entrance there. So he's had enough of those hard tyres.
Yeah, here we go then. The double slipstream for Felix not quite working out as well as he would have hoped. So doesn't manage to get the move done this time around. It's actually very, very difficult to overtake throughout the rest of this lap.
Big squabble there
you
between
can
Can.
maybe do it into the penultimate corner, but
So big squabble there. Can Akichi and Klapex and Sven, they're all there. SOR Ison, they're all battling it out. These names always get me every time. Names. Yeah,
we got to do the can every time we get to the Renault driver. Can find a way past Klapek up ahead. Klapek's tires 7 laps old, so put them on during the pit stop window. Cans are 8 as well, and 8-lap-old softs will be beginning to feel a little bit uncomfortable at this stage of the race. However, the soft tire does still have a huge advantage over the medium in terms of pace when you put it straight on. So there's a chance that you have that pace advantage still available. The pit stop window for hards on that 2-stop, that's now open as well. So everybody else who wants to go to the end, now you can do it on the hards. It's definitely plausible from this point. It's just a case of how much time do you think you're losing running around on this set of medium or potentially the softs.
Yeah, exactly. These looks like Houini was trying to make a pass on Rainbow there. They're sort of squabbling around for 16th and 17th. I was trying to get past the Renault.
Outside. Sorry, Klapek to the outside at turn number 8. That's going to get the move done just about, I think. And IA's on. They've now fallen down to 10th as Kanakimchi follows through and then get this DRS slipstream train down the back straight. Klapek pulling out to try and make sure that can't get it, but now with the DRS, the Renault pulls alongside. It's going to be 3 abreast into the hairpin.
Oh, there's a collision
huge
there.
Contact.
Yeah.
They just squeezed way too much. McLaren in the middle had nowhere left to go. Renault from the right, Mercedes from the left. And there was inevitable contact. Damage for all parties involved, I believe. Horizon might have gotten away with it. Both end plates missing from that Renault. Definitely. And as for Klapek, well, one end plate missing there, but you'll certainly feel that because this final sector is all quick corners where you need that front wing downforce. And Andy now into the pits.
He just boxed. I wonder if he got a quick, just expecting a safety car once he was on the radio going. There was a collision at the back there, just hoping or diving into the box to get a safety car, but it didn't work out. But still, he will slot back out and behind, quite back down, obviously, as most of the pack now crossing the line because they're so bunched up already. Making a pit stop right now will cost you a lot of track positions, but obviously they have to get those tires out.
Question of where does he come out relative to Mizzo? Just in front of that group, I believe, NR Andy is going to come out ahead of this huge battle pack that has held up Mizzo. Mizzo made the correct strategy call, but NR Andy managed to last it out until Mizzo got caught up in traffic and now has around about 2 seconds on their rival for the race win. But that's 2 seconds with 4 or 5 cars involved in it as SLR Danny goes massively across that across the runoff there. And some idiot now has to really consider the options. You need to put in a quick lap here because there's a chance that you could come out in the lead. But if you drop off, then you're going to come out 4 or 5 cars back from NR Andy, and suddenly the entire race has changed.
Yeah, it looks like John in the is about to line up there. Mizzo. Oh, little tap there, and because Mizzo was really late into that corner, it's caught the Racing Point off guard, and then Houini as well had to have a big lock up to avoid the Racing Point. So these guys squabbling for 12th, 13th, and 14th still. This midfield,
and it's given damage to the Racing Point. Jonah missing the end plate once again, and like we mentioned, that's huge around here. And we said exactly this. We were expecting the moves to be at the end of these straights. And at the end of the straights is huge but tight corners. So you end up with this really, really awkward environment where you want to fight hard, but if you're on the outside, it's so incredibly hard to run it round.
So they dive into the box still. Yeah, I'm surprised still we still have these front runners running on these soft compound tires at the moment, the top three. So they must be starting to wear off the cliff right now.
They'll be feeling pretty bad. You can actually begin to notice the rubber moving around in the cars. Now, it's more prominent in motorcycle racing that you have the riders talking about the wheel wobbling underneath them as such, but you do begin to feel it in cars as well when you get to this sort of point where everything's just flexing and overheated to an extent where it's just losing the integrity of the structure itself. For me, the only reason why you would continue at this point is to try and do a one-stop as Felix challenges for the lead. They'll have it done before we even get to the corner. That's exactly how you want to do that move. Time the run, make sure that you pull out and get back in before you even reach that really, really tricky braking zone. And now RR Some Idiot is in that dirty air. So Felix, feeling they got a little bit more pace than the AlphaTauri behind, is going to try to open up a gap.
Exactly. I apologise for the camera angle there. I'm trying to do the look behind, but somehow it only looks behind the lead car. It does not look behind the car that I'm actually highlighted on, so it doesn't matter. We shall ignore using that, as we have both the...
Felix is sideways. Huge moment for Felix. I thought he was going to go in the wall for a moment. Your leader got maybe the biggest kick of oversteer I've ever seen saved in terms of esports racing. That car was pointing to the wall at that point's maximum slide. He's just about corrected it. Gap's still 6/10, but those softs are gone. Those are not comfortable tires at this stage. You got to remember, we talk about 12 laps, and if you're talking about Austria or somewhere, you'd be like, yeah, these tires are fine. This lap is long. It's a massive 5.6 kilometers. That's 3.5 miles. So simply 12 laps is enough to take these softs massively beyond where you want them to do. And every lap you do beyond that is going to push them further and further because you've got maybe an entire extra sector to do than you normally would.
Exactly. And look at that. Their lap times are still okay, but 139s. Some guys in the midfield there on some fresh rubber on 138, so they're not losing that much time just yet. Some idiot did a 141 the last lap, so he's dropping to Felix, but now resuming, catching up. But yeah, they're struggling big time on these tires. Looking overcast, but that's only because it's going to be overcast, so there's no rain expected, so we still will see out a dry race. Looks like Mizzo moves up in a P7 now in the Williams past the Ferrari driver there. Can he make that stick? He has fresh rubber. It's 4 laps, as you can see on the screen there. 4 laps in the mediums, whereas Sven in the Ferrari, lock up, he turns a corner. He is on 11 laps, and Felix gets a 5-second speeding in the pit lane. We need to remember that one, because that will not show.
That one is going to be very, very tough to come back.
As they're both in the pit lanes, both the leaders.
Well.
There you go. Where are they going to slot back out? They're going to slot back out, I'd say, behind Rainbow at this point. Rainbow is running. Where's Rainbow running? P12.
Rainbow's currently sat P12 in this race, but I think everybody other than this group of 3 that was at the front will have to pit again. Putting on these mediums, you look at Mizzo's mediums, they're already 5 laps old. They've got another 14 to do. 19 laps on those mediums will be hugely uncomfortable. Now, you might make it, but you're going to be losing so much lap time at the end. I'd be very surprised if this isn't a 2-stop from everybody else, because that is an aggressive undercut, to say the least, having 5 lap older tires than the guys who are chasing you down.
Yeah, about halfway through this right now. And look who is looking good for right now. The orange, bright McLaren of NR Andy on 2-lap hards can go all the way to the end at the moment, while these other guys up ahead of him, Legenda, as you mentioned, Legend, and Hugo's and SOR, all have medium tires that are going to struggle to go to the end. So this is looking really good for this McLaren driver at the moment. And Mizzo, he has behind him, is also on some pretty soft rubber there.
However, Aiazon just getting the move done on the teammate, I believe. So that medium tire, although it's old, it still seems to be holding up in terms of pace. Now, it might suddenly drop. We've seen that in Formula 1 history. Tires are fine, they're fine, they're fine, they're fine, and you're in the wall because they just completely strip themselves when they hit that heat limit. However, at the moment, Mizzo's not really closing in this group. Even if Andy is being held up a smidge, it really doesn't matter because the cars in front are going to pit and come out so far behind him that Mizzo's the only real contender here, you'd have to say.
Could be a strategy call, although it looks like he is going to then make an overtake on his teammate. So maybe there isn't a strategy call between them, because obviously he's going to be able to go a lot longer to go to the end of the race. Whereas SOR, he needs to get all the way up the road and start hassling these leaders and getting past them. However, Andy right now is a 6.3 off the leaders, so he's going to keep in pace with them. Last lap 138.9, the leaders doing 139s, so he's quicker, even on this tyre. Obviously, this fresher tyre too. So what can he do? Felix, that was leading the race before, he's back in P6. He's got some idiot behind him. They've been battling. It looks like Fluffy now is going to be close to this little squabble here. So we're looking at P9, P10, and P11 battle positions here as we're on board with Fluffy in the Haas. As you can see, Rainbow up ahead. Hopefully, he won't be seeing a real rainbow because of the clouds. That would have worked if he was in a Williams, but yeah.
Yeah, it would have worked if it was in a Williams, but Fluffy just kind of too far back to really get a meaningful tow from the cars ahead at the moment. You get a little bit, but you really do need to get that gap down to within around about 8 tenths before you get a tow, at which point you've already got the DRS, so you should start closing in dramatically at that stage, as I believe that's Legend into the pits, so Hugo's becomes your race leader, but NR Andy, he's your effective race leader as it stands. But keep an eye on Felix Lundberg. Lundberg might be in a very solid position here, despite that penalty. Now, these mediums, they should be able to get to the end on the Racing Point car. 2.4 seconds to Mizzo. Even if Mizzo doesn't pit again, 6-lap pressure tires should be enough to overhaul the Williams. And then you're just a couple seconds off the back of NR Andy, and you'll have mediums, and your opponent has hard, so you will be quicker in terms of grip on that front as well throughout the remainder of this race. So don't count Felix out of a victory yet. Of course, the same goes for RR Some Idiot. If they can just hold on to the back of that Racing Point, then they could be in a very good position.
Definitely, we're on board with Some Idiot right now, just pulling up his gap to P1's 10 seconds. His last lap is at 137.9, so that's his personal best, and he is blistering right now. So he's going to put some pressure to Felix in a matter of no time, because now he's within DRS, already gaining 1/10 just around the last corner. He's now 0.7 behind, going to be putting the pressure on, gaining 0.6, 0.5. He's got the speed. We're going to stay on board with this because it looks like any moment now. We're on lap 16 of 28, so we're just over the halfway point. Can he gain some positions? No penalties at the moment. All these guys at the front have all been clean. I was surprised there'd be more penalties, but there's not. But he's losing a little bit of time there, so it looks like Felix has some pace around the corners, getting some better exit speed, I presume. But maybe some
it's the
has a
exact
straight
same
line
as
speed.
it's the exact same as we see at the tracks where these corners are from, particularly Suzuka. You cannot follow through Suzuka Sector 1 because it's so heavily downforce based. Now, that's essentially what that set of corners is. It's pretty much just an exact replica of Suzuka Sector 1. So in terms of following another car, it's just as difficult. You will lose all that time, which is why these huge straights with DRS are so important to this track actually melding and working together. Else you'd just be losing all the time to the car ahead. Whereas now you can see somebody at 8 tenths back as we come onto the first of these straights, just closing it in a little bit. It's now 7.3 tenths and then 7 tenths, and then this section here, it's more mechanical grip based than downforce, to be honest. You're not really going quick enough, only 70 miles an hour at apex there, and then you floor it again. So you're in a straight line, you can just hit the gas and you'll be out of that corner, and then you start accelerating down once again. That gap back up to 8 tenths per moment, but it's now 7.9, 7.8, 7.5. 7.1. It is going quicker than we can even keep up with it. DRS open, just can't quite get close enough to send one down the inside. And to be honest, that's probably one of the best ways to get the move done there. You see it commonly, again, in motorcycle racing, this block
Sorry
pass
to interrupt there. Looks like, Rainbow's made a big error. That's cost him. He's dropped back into P10, P11 now. There was a battle that was going on between Legend and Hugo's, I believe, that was in the mix. So Fluffy Balls is in there, so there's a squabble there. That's 8th, 9th. I'm not quite sure what happened. Rainbow's dropped all the way back now to P11, as was a UK and Danny are now battling for 13th and 14th place.
Yeah, Danny's just got the upper hand at the moment. However, 5-lap-old softs, they'll go a couple more laps, and then you'll look at potentially making the second pit stop, because 15-lap-old softs is not really where you want to be. So you might be looking at extend these for 2 more laps, make them 7-lap-olds, and then do a sprint to the end on yet another set of the soft compound. Keep an eye out for Sven as well. He's right behind the Alfa Romeo of Wazik, so now it's Wazik coming under pressure. Sven trying to accelerate through those tires, just a little bit fresher on the Ferrari, but crucially, I think Sven's just a little bit quicker. He seems to have a really good handle on that opening couple of corners, and that's going to give him an opportunity. DRS open, overtake being used, and a late move from Wazik to try and defend the place means that Sven has to back out just a little bit, then gains the inside for the entry at turn number 6. That's the outside of 7, the outside of 8. But with the help of the overtake button down that straight, going to get the move done. A kick of oversteer in terms of getting the power down. But now can Wazik fight back in the slipstream? Starting off only 4 tenths back. Well, we've seen 4 tenths be close to here easily. DRS pops open about halfway down this straight. And the Alpha closes. Sven defends the inside for a moment, then realizes that Scuderia Alfa Romeo is just not quite going to get close enough. And all that has allowed Danico to just pull open a little bit of a gap as
Klapek, yes. You can
past Aizon. He's just about got that move done up the run into what is normally Mirabo, and now we're at Suzuka once again. Klapek's done a very, very impressive move and dives into
the pits. So all that work just to go into the pits.
It means that they'll be coming out. They'll have 9 laps left to do on a set of softs at the end of this race. So sprint from Klapek, will they be able to get back into the points is the question. How many of these other guys still have to pit? Because I doubt Fluffy will. I don't think Aizon should have to either. And then potentially a few of the guys further up. Will Mizzo have to box again? We think he might do. But at the moment, he's only 2.7 seconds off the lead. And at one point, that was 2.8. So it's still coming down.
Definitely by far.
Aizon now closing right up to the back of Fluffy. And actually declines to make the move. There was a slight lift there to make sure they could stay behind the Haas. Coming into turns 6 and 7. We're going to try and get the exit from 8. Through the kink at 9, and this is where you want to have the move. It was clever driving from Aizon. He's only a couple tenths off the back of that Haas, and very soon should be a couple tenths in front. We're not even at the DRS activation, and McLaren is alongside. Now the papaya orange streams through on the left-hand side of that Haas car. That will be the inside into this big braking zone. Move is done before we even get there. Thank you very much. Aizon should now be able to pull away. 1-lap-old softs versus 16-lap-old hards. I certainly know which one I would rather have on my car.
Exactly. Like you could just tell at the minute, that grip is just so much better out of the corner. And now, Hueni. Pardon me, so I had to sneeze there. Pardon me, so I'm speaking Spanish now. I was like, Hueni, it's all over the back now of Was UK. So another little battle here. The Mercedes has got fresh pace. Once again, we're seeing a similar thing. He has soft tyres. Looks like he might have corner cutted there, but he is wanting that position at the moment, which is P12, if you can grab it.
Yeah, this is crucial to Hueni's strategy. He's only got 8 laps left in this race, and you can see the cards that he needs to overtake in order to score some points. Notably, Mizzo has come into the pit, so just exiting now, that brings Mizzo out in 8th with fresh softs, 2.7 to the car ahead, and then 5.9 to the one after that. This strategy for Mizzo might prove to be costly, because you gotta remember, started from 2nd position, was running in P2 throughout the early stage of the race, and now we're looking at what, 6th position for the Williams come the end of it? Potentially a costly mistake there for Mizzo. Hueni, they're still sitting behind Sven, just can't quite get close enough to make the move. However, the move on Wazik was done. However, 2.1 seconds up to Sven.
So further up the field there, Legend D, as we'd say. Led D, yeah, I'm going to go there right now. But he's once again, this is the battle this is the major, the Ferrari 1 team and then the junior Ferrari team, shall we say. In P5, he has a pace, he's setting personal bests, 26.4. So he has the pace. Their last laps were 38 flat, whereas Little Pick, I'm going to get that 17 there, is almost half a second slower. So see if you can make that move there so we can get up into P5. Only similar tyre strategies between them. 7-lap versus 4-lap tyres, so a little bit fresher rubber on those mediums. Now he has to strike. This is the time. Open DRS. Try to get as close as he possibly can. Down to 6 seconds there. Down to 5, half a second now. He's got to line him up for the moves. You know where you could probably commentate this. So where you could probably make the pass.
It's going to be tricky in terms of this next part. Now, the Ferrari is very close to the Alpha, but I've got to be honest, I think I would choose not to make the overtake here. It's a question of whether Legend wants to defend, and as the Alpha driver, I am not defending the inside here. You can take the place, I will just overtake you back when we get to the main straight again. We talked about Felix Lundberg. Mizzo pitting has brought the Racing Point right up there, but the Ferrari, once again, fantastic exit out of turn number 8. That allows Legend up the inside for turn 10, and then 11 is the braking zone. It's already done before we get anywhere near it. Unless the Alpha tries something heroic, then that's game over.
And up ahead, we have another brawl fighting there between Hugo's, Some Idiot, and Felix. So Felix is simply bunching Hugo's and Some Idiot together there. Hugo's on the fresher tyre there, on the softs, shall we say. So what can he do? He's in the middle of this battle, and Some Idiot's all over the back of him, ready to pounce. So, but the Red Bull driver there certainly has pace, and he needs to get past Felix.
If Hugo's can clear Felix, there is a chance that they could yet close in NR Andy. NR Andy's only 3.5 seconds further up the road, but every single time you get held up behind this Racing Point, it's a lap gone, and you can't afford to do that if you want to go on to win this race. So Hugo's needs to find a way through, and to be honest, I'd be tempted to do it now through this next part of the track, because you'll be able to get so much better traction out of turn number 8. You could get away with it down that long straight. Red Bull in the slipstream of Racing Point. These two not getting on in the real world, to say the least, but doesn't quite have the move there. Tucks in through 6, through 7. This is turn number 8. There's a long tightening left-hander. There's number 9. And now the DRS will pop open. We're on this massive 1.5 kilometer long straight. And when will the Red Bull have the opportunity to make the move? Has to go to the outside for turn 11. Will it be enough? They're not actually all the way ahead like we've seen, but just about gaining enough of an advantage in the braking zone. Misses the apex of turn 11 a little bit, but it's not too costly. Through 12, which originally was just a part of 11. It didn't have its own name, but now that makes this one Sandevot number 2. That's now turn 13, and he comes up the hill. Got to the car ahead. 3.3, so it's already down. 3.1, 3.0, just keeps on coming down, and you gotta fancy Hugo's now in terms of closing Andy down. If he can keep the tire temperatures in check, he could be on for a very, very good finish. A little bit sideways from the Red Bull. He knows this is the opportunity. However, you're not going to get him down the straight. You need to make sure that you can serve in these slightly slower speed corners, and that when you get to that final sector, then you push, because you'll find 3 seconds in that alone over the course of the next 5 laps. You just need to be sensible and not push the car and those tires too hard too early.
Yeah, behind him as well is Some Idiot that's keeping him within the battle there, but just probably avoiding it. He's going to try to keep within the DRS zone. He's on the borderline at 0.1, so but actually losing a little bit of the straight line speed there to Felix. A little bit behind there. There was some action behind there. I think that was Fluffy that got past Can. And Can and SLR Danny are battling at their P13 and 14. However, I think we'll keep up this battle at the front. Actually, looks like Danny is going to line up a pass. He's very, very close there behind the Renault driver.
Yeah, Danny, again, looked pretty solid in qualifying. We were saying Danny came into this one hoping to be a championship contender and needed to start to string together a few results. Well, this will be an overtake for 13th position, which isn't exactly what you'd expect to see, and even then potentially goes a little bit deep, but he's going to get away with it. The Renault will have an opportunity to fight back. We talked about this time and time again. The yellow B just behind is going to get a good slingshot out of the final corner. 7 tenths away, that might just be a little bit too much, because by the time that they've gained the DRS, it's going to be a long gap to catch up. DRS pops open now, but it's not going to be enough. At the front, however, the gap of 1.9 between Hugo's and NR Andy, so Hugo's is now actually closer to the leader than they are to third place. And Some Idiots just about maintain that 8 tenths of a second gap. now that Felix has lost the DRS, his IRA's unfixed up a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane, and ultimately that's enough to force the retirement from the McLaren driver. So we
have a
spoke
retirement
about
from Ison as he speed. Yeah, I'm not getting an update on that. What happened? But he's completely DNF. He's down to P11 now. So what if he crashed out?
was speeding in the pit lane. I think chose to come into the pits because they had to make another stop, and when you then add on the 5-second penalty onto that, that is just game over. You're not making it into the points from that position.
It showed me he did 257 kilometers an hour in a 60 kilometer an hour pit lane. I don't believe that's correct there.
I'd say that was speeding. I think you'd get a ticket for that one if you did it in the UK.
He'd lose his license, I believe. He'd lose his Class 1 super license.
Most certainly. Mizzo trying to get the traditional Vietnam move done around Philippic, and once again past the Alfa Romeo before you even reach the braking zone. Can brake later due to the softer tyres, and then pulls out of that corner ahead. So Mizzo's still got a little bit of a chance here. Softer rubber than the car up ahead, and they'll struggle to catch some idiot before the end of this one. However, 5th place could definitely be on the cards for the Williams driver. Hugo's, however, they're now within DRS. They come through the penultimate corner in towards the final one. However, it opens up just a little bit, and that might prevent DRS down the pit straight. It does. So Andy pushing at the perfect time, and it's going to be 4 laps of maximum effort from Andy. Needs to try and extend that gap for as long as he can, and then defend with everything they're worth, try and stop an overtake that so far has seemed to be completely guaranteed down that back straight. It seems almost unstoppable in its nature with the overspeed that the guys are gaining. Yep. So Andy needs to try so hard to keep
Mizzo's
that.
Mizzo's putting the pressure on there. Sorry to cut you off there. Mizzo is putting the pressure on the back of the Ferrari there. It looks like he's lining up for a pass.
Squeezes down the inside. That was incredible commitment from the Williams driver. There wasn't a gap there until they dummied the Ferrari driver back to the middle of the road and then pulled over to the left. Can Legend fight back? They're much closer than we saw the Renault beforehand. Only half a second separating these two. A good exit from Legend. They're already closing. 4 tenths. 3 tenths. Now the DRS pops open. Mizzo pulls to the inside of turn number 11 to try and hold that position. Ferrari's not quite ahead when it comes to the braking zone, so Mizzo's going to have the opportunity to fight back. Ferrari around the outside, a little bit of contact, a little bit of argy-bargy, but Legend gets back in front. Mizzo will have to try again once more. A bit of weaving, so Mizzo's not too happy with that one, but it looked fair game from our position here. And Hugo's, that gap, we said it needs to stay up around 6-7 tenths. Well, it's down to 5 or 6 tenths now as they come through the penultimate corner once more. This will begin lap 26 of 28. So these are going to be 3 laps to try and win the race for Andy, or from Hugo's, try and snatch that victory away. Felix Lundberg, remember, 5-second penalty for that driver. Currently leaves them only 4th since Legend is 4.9 seconds back. However, if Legend can then pick up the slipstream from Mizzo, if Mizzo gets the overtake done, there's a chance that Felix could easily drop down to 6th in this race if all of that plays out as anticipated. Red Bull of Hugo's has the DRS down the back straight, turns in for turn number 6, then through 7. Andy picks up a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings. We spoke about it over and over again. You need to take that curve, but you need to be careful with it. And suddenly Andy is behind Hugo's. Hugo's doesn't even need to make the overtake anymore. And RR some idiot might be smelling a 2nd place because 5 seconds for Andy brings them out currently just in front of Felix. However, if some idiot can find 4 tenths and they just passed Felix, they know that the opportunity's there. Now only 2 tenths to find for some idiot, and he would suddenly be P2 in this race.
And once again, Mizzo and Legend are battling it out again. Side by side, as you said, too, Andy, and Andy's going to cost the 3-second time penalty. I was just about to confirm that the top 7 had not getting time penalties. They've been pretty good boys, shall we say, at the moment with their racing corner cutting. But yeah, Andy just got that 3 seconds, cost him, and that's going to hurt him as even some idiot that's 4.9 off the leader there can actually do so. If he can get within 3 seconds of Andy, then he can obviously secure potentially a win pending Hugo's. Is clean, but Hugo's obviously 10 laps, but it has the fresher tyre compound. Yeah, these are a lot of little battles that are happening here right now on track there. Obviously, Felix Hugos and Legend can do something about Mizzo. Looks like Mizzo's already gained 1.2 up the road there from Legend. Further down, there's gaps forming between most of the field. So apart from Jonan, looks like maybe they'll do something about Rainbows. But all the action is at the front right now as Hugo's
Yeah, and
getting
RR
close.
Some Idiot, is 5.2 away from NR Andy. So that gap, remember, 5-second time penalty for the McLaren driver. This is a real fight. We can't see it on track, but 15 lap old hards, 12 lap old mediums, those will feel pretty similar for the two drivers. It's a case of who wants it more at this stage. Can the AlphaTauri, with only 1.5 laps left to go, find 2/10 on the on-track leader to try and get through? And Hugo's might go for a move, not quite close enough, and that would be a nightmare for Some Idiot, because then remember, Andy would pick up the DRS next time around, and that might be enough to give them the race win. But as it stands, not quite getting the DRS yet, and are Some Idiot has it down to just 5.1 now. That gap keeps on coming down, and Hugo's is sitting quite pretty at the moment. They'll be aware, Jeff will have said the car in front has a penalty, but I think you have to ask for that information at times, if I'm not wrong.
I believe you do, yeah. But I'm usually the Jeff for a lot of the drivers. So if they do have a race engineer outside of Jeff, then I'm sure the race engineer will be informing them as much as possible. So he's dropping a little bit back now as well on those straights. Same thing with Felix behind Some Idiot. He also drops back on that same part of the track. However, then they'd start bunching up once again. So we're going to see this battle forming here between the top 7, top 6, shall we say, as some of the other drivers in the midfield do have some penalties. Looks like Clubex was going to get another one there for invalidating that lap. But yeah, what was UK has moved up ahead of Can. So Can's going to be out of the points, and is out of the points there as well. So only 3 retirements, but we're on the last lap now, so let's keep an eye on this battle up ahead.
The gap between Some Idiot and Andy went up just a little bit there. It's up to 5.3 again, and Some Idiot, they got plenty of warnings left because they voluntarily cut that corner just a little bit, taking way more curb than the AlphaTauri driver had decided to on previous laps. No ERS available as it all got used down this back straight, and still 2/10 to find. It's 0.177 now. Now it's back up to 3/10 for a moment. Just cannot quite seem to get this gap down at the moment. Wazuk picks up a 3-second time penalty. Does that change anything meaningful? No, it doesn't. Wazuk's in 13th place. Some Idiot still 2/10 off the back of Andy. They're pushing as hard as they possibly can back what would normally be up a hill, but at the moment it's just towards the top of the track. Andy holding on. It's down to less than a 10th now between these two drivers. A lock up from Some Idiot, and it's back up to 3/10. It was under for a moment, but then it went back up, and now it comes down. But of course, Andy's already crossed the line, and it wasn't quite to be. Some Idiot, I believe, also potentially having some penalties in the end. Anyway, Mezzo comes across in a well-fought fourth, but there was a few inquiries, I think, that will happen now in terms of the strategy decisions there. Legend picks up 5th. Felix Lundberg crosses in 6th for Racing Point. Philip picks 7th. Hoyne and Clappett pick up some small but welcome points for Mercedes, and Sven will also pick up some points for that struggling Ferrari team crossing the line. The final point scoring position, P number 10. That was an exciting race, wasn't it?
It certainly was. I was actually expecting a little bit more safety cars. So these drivers were kind of well behaved at the end of the day. And we did see some pit stops, obviously, for some new front wings, carbon fiber parts, etc., etc. But a lot cleaner. So very impressed. And obviously only 3 retirements. That's good for a lot of the drivers at the end of the day. You want to see that checkered flag. You're putting all the effort in. They're putting in all the practice sessions. And it's good to see a little bit of a mix between the top order and obviously keeping a lot of entertainment. But so far, all these drivers have been kept us on our toes in the commentary box the whole time anyway. So there's plenty of action to see. Little shout out there from somebody. That's JTal. Thank you very much for the shout out on YouTube. Sorry I couldn't get to you earlier. It was just too much to follow on screen. So there's your driver of the day too.
Clapex picks up that award. They, remember, were involved in a crash that wasn't that their fault early on, caused the safety car. Both Ferraris coming together and sweeping up one of the black arrows amongst it all. But it would be a win for Red Bull that they very, very much deserve. Enerandy P2, and then Alpha Tauri picking up a welcome third position. And for the first time, not only is there no Williams on the podium, but there's no Williams in first place. I gotta be honest, the story of that race, it was all about the back straight. We knew it would be powerful, but I didn't expect it to be that strong. It was arguably a better overtaking opportunity than we even see the likes of Baku. And everything was based around that, with a little bit of strategy added in as well, in terms of not having seen the professionals do it. So you got to try and figure out those tire compounds for yourself. I've been Tom Davis. Thank you very, very much to Biggles for joining me in the combox, helping take us through a very hectic event this evening. Thank you to everybody who listened, tuned in, left comments in chat or whatever you do in the YouTube streaming world, and we hope to see you next week.